Arthur Keene and the unsuspecting children of Brooksville, what began as a simple trip to Sweet Treats quickly turned into a nightmare that no parent could have imagined. The small town of Brooksville had always been the kind of place where parents felt comfortable letting their children play outside, where neighbors waved at one another on morning walks, and where the local businesses knew every face that walked through their doors. Among these businesses, Sweet Treats stood out as a favorite for children and families alike. Its colorful displays of candy, jars filled with bright sweets, and the scent of chocolate and baked goods created an inviting atmosphere that drew kids from all over town. On one seemingly ordinary Saturday morning, the store was alive with activity, filled with the laughter of children and the chatter of parents enjoying a rare day off. It was the kind of morning that appeared perfectly normal, but beneath the surface, something unusual was stirring. A man who had never been seen in the town before entered Sweet Treats just as the store reached its mid-morning peak. He wore a plain, slightly worn jacket and carried a nondescript backpack, blending in with the crowd yet somehow drawing attention through the way he moved. He didn't seem in a hurry, wandering slowly from aisle to aisle, his eyes scanning the children as they selected candies and toys. At first, his presence was unremarkable, but as he lingered near the checkout counter and smiled at passing children, Mr. Harris, the store owner, felt a subtle unease. Something about the man's gaze lingered too long, and the attention he paid to the children seemed calculated. The man began offering small candies to the children, complimenting their choices and asking them to help him with trivial tasks, like showing him a particular toy or reaching for a snack from a high shelf. The children, enticed by the sweet treats and seemingly friendly demeanor, hesitated only briefly before complying. Their parents were nearby but distracted by their own conversations, and at first, no one thought much of it. One by one, 5 children were drawn into brief excursions with the man, leaving the store under the pretense of helping him. Each child returned after a short time, smiling but a little unsettled, unable to explain exactly why they had followed him. It wasn't until one parent, returning from the restroom, noticed that her child had briefly disappeared with the man and returned seemingly dazed that alarm bells went off. She reported the encounter to Mr. Harris, who immediately recalled seeing the man's unusual behavior from the moment he had entered. Concerned, they decided to notify the local police. Officer Daniels, a seasoned officer known for his intuition, arrived at Sweet Treats within minutes. By the time he got there, the man was gone, leaving behind only the faint traces of his presence. The small candies, the nervous excitement in the children, and the lingering sense that something about the morning had been wrong. Detective Daniels interviewed each child, carefully piecing together the events of the morning. It became clear that the man had been deliberate in choosing whom to approach and in gaining their trust. Parents, previously confident in the safety of their town, now felt a creeping unease, realizing that an ordinary morning at the candy store had almost been exploited for sinister purposes. The first pieces of the puzzle were coming together, but the full extent of the man's intentions remained hidden, waiting to be uncovered by the careful scrutiny of law enforcement. Detective Daniels spent the following hours reviewing every angle of the security footage from Sweet Treats, watching the man's movements with a mix of curiosity and alarm. The footage revealed more than anyone had anticipated. The man didn't merely wander through the aisles aimlessly. His behavior was methodical. He observed the children as if studying them, waiting for moments when their attention was elsewhere or when a parent's gaze was distracted. His actions were subtle, designed to appear innocent, offering a candy here, complimenting a choice there, but the pattern was unmistakable. Each gesture was calculated to make the children feel comfortable and to lower their natural hesitation. The footage showed him approaching 5 children individually, each interaction brief but purposeful. He asked them questions that seemed harmless at first, about toys or candies, but his tone, gestures, and the way he positioned himself indicated a practiced technique for gaining trust. Detective Daniels noted the same tactic repeated with each child. a small reward followed by a request, a brief invitation to follow him to another part of the store, and a gentle encouragement that made the children feel like they were helping someone friendly. The uniformity of his method was chilling, revealing a mind that had clearly thought this through before stepping into the store that morning. Police interviews with the children added layers of detail that the footage alone couldn't provide. Each child described feeling a strange mix of excitement and unease, a subtle sense that they were doing something unusual yet harmless. One child mentioned being asked to meet the man behind the store for a quick surprise, while another said he wanted help carrying a small bag. The consistency in their accounts indicated that the man had prepared scenarios in advance, knowing exactly what to say and how to act to lure each child. While the interviews continued, officers traced the source of a worn backpack seen in the footage. Using tips from local informants, they located a rental storage unit on the outskirts of Brooksville, rented under a false name. When they accessed it, they found it packed with an assortment of candy, small toys, notebooks filled with lists and detailed observations, and personal notes describing the children he had approached. The journal pages were painstakingly organized, with descriptions of each encounter, the child's reactions, and the steps he intended to take in the future. It became evident that the man's presence in Sweet Treats had been the culmination of careful planning. Investigators pieced together a timeline. The man had likely spent weeks or even months observing the children he eventually targeted, memorizing routines, noting when and where they were most vulnerable, and preparing his approach to seem non-threatening. The contents of the storage unit suggested he had been stockpiling rewards, refining strategies to manipulate trust, and documenting every success to improve future attempts. Detective Daniels recognized the severity of what they had uncovered. This was not a random stranger. It was a predator operating with precision, and the morning at Sweet Treats had only been the first step of a larger plan. The implications for the town of Brooksville were sobering. Parents who once felt their neighborhood was impenetrable now realized that someone with ill intentions had been planning to exploit the innocence of their children. The police department, aware of the urgency, intensified patrols around schools, parks, and other local stores, determined to catch the man before he could approach any more children. Each revelation added tension and a growing sense of dread as the community began to understand how close they had come to a tragedy. Authorities quickly identified the man from the Sweet Treats footage as 42-year-old Arthur Keene, a transient who had drifted between towns for years. His past was a patchwork of minor offenses, loitering, petty theft, and trespassing, but nothing violent. To the community, this revelation was disturbing. Someone who seemed so unremarkable could orchestrate such a calculated plan to target children. As police delved deeper into Keene's history, more unsettling details emerged. Neighbors from towns he had briefly stayed in reported odd behavior, lingering near playgrounds, following children home from school, and leaving cryptic notes that seemed innocent but had an unsettling undertone. The investigation revealed a pattern that had gone unnoticed until now, showing a man who had long been refining his predatory approach. Keene's tactics extended beyond the candy store. Detectives discovered he had been using social media platforms to monitor children in Brooksville. He would send seemingly harmless messages, asking innocuous questions about favorite games or snacks, gradually establishing trust. These online interactions were designed to familiarize children with his presence, making them more likely to comply when approached in person. For the 5 children he had engaged at Sweet Treats, there was evidence that Keene had observed them online before their in-store encounters. It became clear that his planning was sophisticated, using both digital and physical means to manipulate and lure vulnerable children. The police immediately issued alerts to parents, schools, and community organizations, warning them of Keene's methods. Flyers were distributed with his photograph, cautioning families to be vigilant and report any suspicious behavior. The town, previously confident in its safety, was gripped by fear. Parents scrutinized every interaction, every stranger in public spaces, and many kept their children home from school and local activities. The atmosphere of normalcy in Brooksville had shifted dramatically, replaced by suspicion and anxiety. Keene's storage unit became a key piece of evidence. Among the journals, candy, and toys, investigators found detailed records of other children he had observed in previous towns, as well as notes outlining his plans to approach them. His writing indicated an obsessive attention to detail. He recorded children's routines, favorite spots, and reactions to small interactions. Investigators realized that sweet treats had been only one stage in a far larger scheme, and the urgency to prevent further incidents intensified. By reconstructing Keene's movements and connections, police identified a network of potential targets he had been cultivating. Each step of his planning was chillingly meticulous, showing a man who had spent months ensuring that his methods were effective. The community, horrified by the scope of his actions, began to rally together. Local businesses increased surveillance, parents organized neighborhood watches, and schools implemented tighter security protocols. The town had been shaken to its core, but authorities were determined to act swiftly before Keene could carry out any further attempts. As the investigation progressed, every lead brought them closer to understanding the extent of his obsession and the lengths he was willing to go to manipulate and control his victims. Days passed with tension thick in Brooksville. As police continued their surveillance and investigation, Officer Daniels and his team combed through every lead, monitoring parks, playgrounds, and streets where children were known to gather. Keene, aware of the scrutiny, remained elusive, moving cautiously between locations and avoiding places he suspected were being watched. Despite his efforts to stay under the radar, his patterns were predictable to seasoned investigators. His obsession with children had created habits that left traces for law enforcement to follow. The breakthrough came unexpectedly. Officers noticed a vehicle parked near the town's Central Park, one that matched descriptions from residents who had seen a man loitering near playgrounds in previous weeks. Daniels, recalling the sweet treats encounter, immediately suspected Keene. Undercover officers were quickly deployed, blending into the surroundings as parents and children enjoyed the late afternoon sunshine. The plan required patience. Keene had proven careful and calculated, and any premature move could allow him to vanish once again. Hours passed as the team observed the park, noting every passerby, every interaction, and every minor movement. Then, a group of children approached the man, who carried a small bag and a handful of candy. His gestures were familiar, the same subtle cues documented in Sweet Treats footage: smiles, gentle encouragement, and casual conversation. Officers held their positions, waiting for the precise moment to intervene. Keene moved closer to one child, bending slightly to show something from his bag, the officer's instincts telling them that the window to act was immediate. When he attempted to guide the child toward a secluded section of the park, undercover officers closed in from multiple angles. Keene reacted instinctively, trying to flee, but the officers were prepared. He was cornered near a row of benches, the escape routes blocked by plainclothes personnel. He struggled briefly, but within moments, he was restrained and taken into custody. Nearby parents watched in stunned silence, many realizing only then how close their children had been to potential danger. The arrest was swift and efficient, leaving Keene with no opportunity to enact any further part of his plan. A search of the vehicle and nearby areas revealed the full extent of his preparations. The bag contained additional candy, small toys, and notebooks filled with observations and plans, similar to those found in his storage unit. Hidden cameras were discovered near benches and playground equipment, suggesting that Keene had been recording children's routines for weeks, meticulously documenting their movements and reactions. The evidence painted a picture of a man who had spent months orchestrating encounters, carefully manipulating trust to achieve his objectives. Brooksville's relief was tempered by shock. While no child had been physically harmed, the knowledge of how close the town had come to a potential tragedy left a lasting impression. Police continued to secure the area, ensuring that all evidence was documented and collected. Parents, shaken but grateful for the officers' vigilance, began to reevaluate their sense of safety, understanding that danger could sometimes appear in the most ordinary places. Keene's arrest marked a turning point in the investigation, but the community remained wary, realizing that the lessons learned from this terrifying chapter would linger far longer than the incident itself. Arthur Keene's arrest sent shockwaves through Brooksville, leaving the town grappling with a mixture of relief and lingering fear. News of the capture spread quickly, and parents crowded into community centers and schools, eager to understand the full scope of what had happened. Authorities held press briefings to outline the evidence, describing how Keene had meticulously planned his interactions with children, both online and in person. Each detail underscored the danger he had posed and the narrow margin by which tragedy had been avoided. For many families, the morning at Sweet Treats became a defining memory, a moment when normalcy was nearly shattered, reminding them of the vulnerability that exists even in familiar surroundings. The legal proceedings that followed were intense. Keene faced multiple charges, including attempted abduction and child exploitation, as well as possession of materials documenting his predatory behavior. During the trial, investigators presented security footage, journal entries, and messages he had sent to children online. The journals revealed the extent of his obsessive planning, noting the routines, behaviors, and vulnerabilities of the children he had targeted. Psychologists testified about the manipulative techniques he had used, explaining how his calculated strategies could easily have ensnared more victims if authorities had not intervened when they did. The courtroom was tense as families listened, many parents visibly shaken by the details, yet thankful that law enforcement had acted swiftly. Beyond the courtroom, the town of Brooksville began to take action to prevent similar incidents in the future. Neighborhood watch programs were strengthened, schools implemented more stringent safety protocols, and parents became more vigilant about monitoring their children's activities, both online and in public spaces. Community meetings emphasized education, awareness, and communication, ensuring that families had the tools to recognize and respond to potential threats. The town collectively acknowledged that while they had been fortunate this time, complacency could not be allowed to take root again. Psychologists and child safety experts later analyzed Keene's behavior, emphasizing that his actions represented a rare but highly organized pattern of predatory planning. They explained that individuals like Keene often operate with careful attention to detail, combining observation, manipulation, and psychological tactics to gain trust. This insight helped parents understand the subtle signs that might otherwise go unnoticed, and reinforced the importance of teaching children how to recognize and respond to inappropriate advances. In the weeks and months following Keene's arrest, Brooksville slowly returned to a sense of normalcy, though the events remained etched in the community's memory. Children returned to the candy store and playgrounds, now accompanied by parents or guardians, and local authorities maintained a heightened presence in public spaces. The case of Arthur Keene became a cautionary tale, illustrating how danger can appear in ordinary settings and how vigilance, intuition, and rapid action by law enforcement can prevent potential tragedies. Brooksville had survived a terrifying ordeal, and while the town would always remember the threat that had loomed over its children, it had also learned the value of community awareness and the power of collective action in safeguarding the most vulnerable.